Hello and welcome to the More Than Mostly Comedy podcast. I'm Dan Graham.
And I'm David Fgrave.
And hello to everyone, and thank you for joining us for
Yes.
episode 2 of Series 6.
Yeah,
Impressive.
it's quite impressive. It's the difficult sixth series.
Yeah. And today we'll be talking to Tony Hawks, which is very exciting.
Yeah, I mean, we could have talked to him for ages, but we still talked to him for a fair while. But hopefully you'll enjoy listening to it. We might as well hand you over to that now. So here we are at the More Than Mostly Comedy podcast, and we have with us the fantastic Tony Hawks. Hello, Tony. How are you doing?
Hello there. Lovely to be here.
Thank you for doing this.
When I say here, I'm in my front room.
Yeah, we're all in different locations, spread across the UK. It's very exciting.
Yeah.
I was just sort of intrigued as to what led you to comedy in the first place. How did you start out? Was it your intention to do that, or was it just how you sort of fell, so to speak?
No, it was never my intention to go into comedy at all. I really wanted to be a singer-songwriter, really. I wanted to be in the music business. And I was playing and singing in pubs and doing this kind of stuff and starting to realize what a tough industry that was. And then I would mess around on a microphone, in different, especially when I had a few beers and got lots of laughs. And I found people were coming back for that, really. And I had a few silly poems that I used to do, a couple of I had a comedy poem called "I'm an Ingrowing Toenail." I don't know why I wrote that. I just wrote it in a pub once. And I used to do these and people would request them. And so then somebody said, look, there's an alternative comedy circuit. You should do something on this. And I said, well, what do you do? They said, you turn up and you do 5 minutes, and if you're good, they book you again. So I prepared 5 minutes and went and got myself terrified, but got through it, and it sort of grew from there.
Did you have comedy influences back then, or were you sort of just following what you found funny?
Well, what I was doing was just quite silly, really. I was doing. I was a character, really. I couldn't really be myself at that stage. So I used to have this character called the Fabulous Tony, all-round entertainer. And I was a sort of passing around like I was some sort of useless cabaret artist.
Right.
And messing around there. And then I also later found that music was very helpful. So I'd have a guitar with me and I had some silly songs. And that was very comforting because I felt audiences were a bit easier on you if you weren't going that well. They were sort of thinking, well, the songs must be better than what he's doing now. We'll give him more of a chance. Whereas if you're just standing there and you've done all your stuff and then you've got nowhere else to kind of go, really. So, and I'd just go into a song. Audiences are sort of quite forgiving a little bit, even if a comedy song isn't that good, I've noticed over the years, because I quite like listening to the music side of it. It breaks things up a little bit. So I used to get away with it that way.
Right. What led you to, because obviously you had your number 4 hit with Morris Minor and the Majors. How did you meet them and how did that come about?
Yeah, I mean, the more I think about it, everything I've done has sort of pretty much come around the wrong way round. So the way that happened is I'd written a song. My dad once had said to me, why don't you write a song about Morris Minor cars? People love Morris Minor cars. And I thought it was a useless idea, but we're sitting at the piano one day and this sort of song popped out. Morris Minor, never let you down, get you around the town straight from A to B. And it was a sort of Chas and Davy type thing. And I recorded it and sent it into a couple of talent shows. And there was this one show, I can't remember the name of it now, actually. Anyway, whatever it was, they rang me up and said, we love this song, who are you? And I said, well, I'm a kind of solo artist. And they said, well, that's a shame. I said, why? They said, well, we've got all the solo artists we need. And I said, well, we're a band too. There's the people that I recorded it with. We can come on as a band.
Right.
And so they sort of booked me to come for these auditions as a band, and I didn't have one. So I rang up I just thought, who can I get? And there's a couple of mates of mine, and we sort of formed to do an audition to go on a talent show,
Right.
TV talent show. We then made the audition, did well on the show, then got cabaret bookings off the back of that, saying yes, and we didn't even have an act, So everything came about the wrong way.
Yeah.
And then I dug out these sort of comedy songs I'd done, and we worked them into a little trio. And then that came around that way. So again, absolutely no ambition or intention to do anything.
Yeah.
How long after that did the TV show come?
It was probably about 18 months after that, quite a while. We started to do quite well on the circuit, and then we got on Saturday Live, and then we did this very politically incorrect song I'd written called Stutter Rap.
Yeah.
And then Virgin saw that and picked up on it and said, we think that would make a good single. So we quickly signed a deal and just did a little one-off single.
Right.
And that got to number 4 and number 1 in Australia, and all that happened the wrong way around as well.
You make it sound very easy.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it's with me, actually, the first thing you do seems to be the easiest thing.
Right.
And then I assume it's easy. And then I find out afterwards how difficult it is when I can't get anything else away.
Right, okay.
That's really interesting as well, because I think that Saturday Live performance is still on YouTube. And I watched it after I'd watched like the video of the song, but I didn't realise that was even prior to the fact prior to it being a single even, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, no, we didn't have a deal or anything. And we had a sort of silly dance routine, and the song was the backing track. It was only after we'd done that when we decided to combine it and make it a spoof of the Beastie Boys at the same time. So we sort of doubled it up as a comedy song and a bit of a Beastie Boys spoof. But yeah, you assume at that point that everything's kind of easy and that you'll go up the charts and all this and that. And we'll probably be coming on to this later, but a similar thing happened with my first book as well. So I just seem to be, but we'll leave that. I'm sure you've got.
We'll get there.
Well,
yeah, that's right.
So you did Top of the Pops as well.
Yes.
How was that? And also who was on with you? Because that's such an iconic thing to do as well. But particularly someone who is a singer-songwriter as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, it had always been my ambition. So my ambition, I think, probably had been to be on Top of the Pops, but I hadn't expected it to be doing a kind of comedy song. And I'm trying to think if the people that introduced me are now in prison. I don't think they are. I think they got away with it at the time.
At time of going to press.
That's right. It was honestly, it was quite possibly the biggest anticlimax of my life doing that show.
No, that's a
it
shame.
really was, because I was so looking forward to it. But we went in and we mimed live. As live, so it wasn't.
Okay.
It was. They recorded the whole thing like it was live, but it wasn't. It was going out the following night. But they said, "We'll only stop if something goes terribly wrong. We're doing this. You've got to do it right." And miming is quite hard live in a way, because if you're doing it live, you're doing it and you're saying it. But if you've got to get it synced right when you're miming, so that was a bit tricky. But we did it and, did okay. And it lasts obviously 3.5 minutes. And then you're thinking, okay, now we've got a party now.
Yeah.
But everybody else that was on the show, and Wet, Wet, Wet were on, who were quite friendly to us. But the rest, I can't remember who they were. But they honestly came in like their record companies had just pushed them in, go and do this to promote it, whisked them straight off, and they were gone. They just came in and went straight off. And so the three Morris Minor and the Majors boys were wandering around the BBC thinking, we've got to go to the bar.
Yeah.
So we went to the BBC bar, where there was one man there who was a depressed newsreader, who was just sitting there. And we sat with him and told him we'd just been on Top of the Pops and he wasn't interested. Right. And then at night, then we looked at the clock and it was 9 o'clock, so we thought, well, what do we do now? We can't go home.
Yeah.
So we went to the pub and tried to tell people we'd just been on Top of the Pops, but it didn't go out till the following night anyway. So it was a disaster. It was, and did end up going to bed at about 10:30,
Right. Extraordinary.
But you were on it, which is still a big thing. You've always got that.
We were on it. We were definitely on it. Yeah.
And actually, it must have been hard to mime because it's a rap as well, and it's like spoke song. So if it was a song, it's probably easier to do that. But yeah.
It wasn't, I mean, obviously, you just perform it really, but I got quite nervous about the fact that I was having to mime it. I think I'd rather have done it live.
And so what followed that? Did you do an album? I know you did a series, didn't you, as well as Boris Minor and the Moses?
Yeah, well, the record company got very surprised. So that we were then sort of rushing around doing all the things that you do, and it was exciting. They were saying, can you promote it on this? Can you do it here and there? But the writing was on the wall. We did sign a deal to do an album. But doing an album of sort of comedy songs doesn't really exist. Not many people had made an album of comedy songs that would sell. But anyway, we started recording, and we wanted to do a follow up with this song I'd written called, which was a heavy metal spoof called "We're Knitting Cardigans in Hell." The devil wants a jumper, and I want one as well. Was the way it went, and we used to go quite. Well, I think that might have done something in the bottom end of the charts. But I'd also, unfortunately for me, I told them I'd written this song, which was a spoof of Stock Aitken and Waterman, called "This Is the Chorus."
Yeah.
And the record company thought this was a fantastic idea to do this. So we recorded it, and we made it sound exactly like Stock Aitken and Waterman. And then I think Pete Waterman, allegedly, so I'm told all the radio stations that if they played it, they couldn't have exclusives on Kylie Minogue and Jason Don. So he sort of stopped it dead. It didn't get any play.
Right.
And I think that was pretty much. Then I knew the writing was on the wall, because the record company rang up and said, "Look, can you go to MTV or something and tomorrow at 9 a.m. and do this interview to promote it?" And I said, "Yeah, what time are you sending the car?" And it went quiet, and they said, "Well, we thought you could make your own way there." And that's the moment when you know your career is kind of over as a pop star.
Yeah.
When you're back on the tube.
Yeah.
Was that when, did you then try and just focus on stand-up and comedy, or were you still doing music as well? What happened next?
Well, what happened after that was we actually had a go at doing a TV series, actually, called Morris Minor's Marvelous Motors. So we did have a sort of spin-off thing, and that was again, another thing where I think who was it that asked me? Because I'd been doing a bit of work with Red Dwarf. It was kind of at this stage I was starting to do stuff on my own.
Right.
As this character, and was doing quite well with that as well. And as the Morris Minor sort of went down the pan, I was emerging a bit as a solo artist. But we had a go at this series, and it went into completely the wrong slot. Didn't do very well, and then that was pretty much it. That was the end of that whole episode of my life. And then I was doing warm-ups. So it was kind of start again, at the bottom. I did warm-ups for TV shows and had to kind of reinvent myself as a solo artist, really. And but it was good training to work an audience and do that. And Red Dwarf, did all the warm-ups for Red Dwarf. They gave me little parts in it. And eventually Jimmy Mulville, I was doing something, and Jimmy Mulville from Hat Trick said, we like you. Will you come and try out for this show called The Brain Drain? And that was kind of like a comedy version of Question Time.
Right.
And I did one of those, and then they invited me back. And then I did the whole series like I was a regular, but I wasn't. They just kept inviting me back every week. If I did well, the pressure was on. We did a second series, and Joe Brand and I were both regulars on that. And that felt like it was taking off. And then a new commissioner came in at the BBC, and they decided not to commission another series. And then Back in the Wilderness sort of again. It's been like that all the way through, up and down. It's never really been, it never got on a roll. It's always done things, started to happen and then stopped. But instead of thinking I'm unlucky, my philosophy is to think I was lucky in the first place to get some success at all. It's tough.
And so many things across the entertainment world.
Yes, I've crossed various genres.
Definitely.
Some might say in desperation, because the other one.
I was going to just jump in there, Tony. Our assistant Gemma's just looked it up. Top of the Pops was 14th of January 1988. Simon Mayo and Gary Davies take a look at Britain's best-selling tracks, blah, blah, including performances from Tiffany, Morris Minor and the Majors, AC/DC and Belinda Carlisle, apparently. So that's who was on
That's
the
eclectic.
Really?
Yeah.
So that was. I don't think they were there. I mean, I know,
Okay.
I definitely do know that we did it twice. So there was. Well, when I say we did it twice, we were on twice. I think they just played in the performance we did the first time. So, but when we did it, it probably was then. But I don't. Certainly, Belinda Carlisle wasn't. I don't remember any of them being there. In fact,
Yeah.
but I do remember Wet, Wet, Wet being there because they were quite friendly. They were the only people that were friendly.
Right. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think if you'd had more of a direct plan, it would have been harder in many ways? 'Cause it seems like so many of the things you've done and had sort of big success with are kind of accidental. Almost.
Yeah, well, I mean, I did have a plan and it just didn't happen. You know,
Right,
the plan was, I had a single come out actually as Tony Hawk's called Together, and it came out in Germany, and it was a sort of ballad. I was trying to be a pop star when I was sort of 19, 20 sort of thing.
Yeah.
And that didn't really happen. And so that was the plan, and the plan just never happened. And nearly everything else I've done since has been by accident. Now, whether you could argue it's a bit better that it's that way round, but I suspect it happens more than we think. I remember working years ago with Mel Smith, Mel Smith, Griff Rhys Jones,
Right. Yeah.
and because Morris Minor Majors, we had the same manager as Mel and Griff, and Mel, they were huge at the time. Alas Smith and Jones, really big news. And I was talking to him, and he was talking like, "Well, this has all gone wrong for me. I wanted to be a film director.
Right.
Yeah.
I didn't want to do this at all. So it just happens that way around sometimes."
Yeah.
Would you say accidental would be how you describe joining? I'm sorry, I haven't a clue. In Just a Minute.
I suppose so. The Just a Minute thing came about because Paul Merton approached at that point when Paul and I both sort of did it. Paul broke in first. There was a producer called Sarah Smith, and we'd both done some things with her. And Paul said, "Can I come on? I'm a huge fan of the show." And she managed to get Paul on. Right. And then I said, "Well, yeah, I'd love to have a go at that as well." And at that point, I was probably about 30, and everyone else on the show was probably in their 60s. And it was Nicholas, it was Peter Jones, Clement Freud, and Derek Nimmo. And to a lot of people listening, they won't know who any of those people are, but Google them. Yeah. They were big news at the time. And they were, apart from Peter Jones, and Nicholas was okay, but the others, Derek Nimmo hardly said a word to me, and Clement Freud was just rude. I mean, they just didn't like a young person coming on at all.
Right.
But it was something that I wanted to do at that stage. I'd been a fan of that show. And Clue, I can't remember how that came about. Again, I guess the producer just sort of said, maybe heard me on the other one and thought you might be good on this. And again, that was like suddenly you're working with kind of comedy heroes of yours, Tim Brooke Taylor, Graham Garden, The Goodies, that kind of thing, Barry Cryer. And that was exciting as well. So at that point, I'd done all the other stuff. I'd been a pop star. And now it was time to do Radio 4.
Right. Was that, you say it was exciting, but was it also daunting joining such, illustrious comedians at that stage?
Yeah, it was. It was quite scary in a way, especially given that they really weren't supportive. I mean, that's not true of the I'm Sorry I Haven't a Clue team. It was the Just a Minute team weren't supportive. The Clue team were. Yeah, it was a mixture of exciting and daunting, really. But you need a bit of that, don't you?
It's kind of disappointing in a way when there must have been so many people gone through the doors of Just a Minute that they weren't more supportive, really, because you got new faces and old faces. That's the kind of point of it, But I suppose it's just where they were at that time of their lives.
Well, I think at that time, I don't think they saw themselves as being a show where new faces would come in. I think they saw themselves as being like the 4, 5, 6 of us do it, and that's it. Why are they letting these young people in? So the funny thing is that the role is reversed now. I mean, I just did a double recording of Just a Minute 2 nights ago, and suddenly I'm the senior figure, and there's somebody we were talking about stutter rap, and the comedian Emma Siddy, she was on,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and I said, it happened. It might have happened before you were born, and we worked out it did happen before she.
Right. It's crazy, isn't it?
So but I have to say, I like to think that I'm nice to them. I give them advice, I give them encouragement, and I
bet.
think that's what we should be doing because
Yeah.
I didn't get it, so they're entitled to something nice happening.
Also, I got vaguely excited because I'm a big Beatles fan, and both Clement Freud was on the cover of Band on the Run, and Derek Nimmo did the voice for an unreleased Wings film in the mid-70s. So I was just checking that. So,
Oh wow,
bit
okay.
trivia,
So
yeah.
that's in your role as McCartney fan rather than
Yes.
Beatles.
Yeah, I
He
guess. Yeah.
wasn't on the cover of Sergeant Pepper's then.
No, sadly not. But or maybe his dad was his dad Lucian Freud? Is that right? Or
His brother was Lucian Freud, and they never spoke to each other. And I think his grandfather was Freud himself.
Freud
whatever
himself, right? Yeah.
What was his first name?
I can't remember. Can't remember.
Sigmund.
Yes.
Sigmund, that's it.
That's the
Yeah,
one.
yeah.
Before you wrote Round Island with a Fridge, and obviously that sort of again came about accidentally. Had you ever considered like writing a book before, writing sort of long form? Had you ever done anything like that?
No, again, you see, that's another bizarre thing. Because I didn't really come through this. I could have done. I mean, I applied to go to Cambridge, so I was doing my A levels, doing okay, and I thought, like a lot of people, I thought I'll try and get to Cambridge so I can get in the footlights because I was a massive Monty Python fan.
Yeah.
But they said you've got to stay on for another term and do these extra exams. And I thought I just couldn't face doing that. So I didn't do that. And then I went to Manchester University and ended up dropping out. And so I wasn't really. I think if you go to those Cambridge things and rub shoulders with all those other people who are very talented but supremely confident, and then they also meet everybody else who knows the ropes, and they're all half of them are all radio producers, and they know, and there's a sort of sense that they are the best. I never had that feeling. I had a feeling of like, well, I don't really belong in a comedy world. And so I also never felt I could write anything really, but I knew that I was writing comedy in terms of performing and mini routines and stuff. And the one thing that made me think I could write is that I used to write. This is interesting. This reminds me in the days, somebody sent them to me. I used to write long letters to people, just like when I was on holiday or something, I'd write 2 or 3, 4 pages describing the holiday. And somebody wrote back and said, these made us laugh. You really got you really got a talent for writing funny prose.
Yeah.
You should write something one day. And that stuck in my head. So that when this fridge journey started to emerge, I thought, well, I'll try and write this now, and I will have a go at doing this. But it wasn't like at school. You thought if you just said to me, "Do you want to write a book?" I'd say, "No, not at all. That's going to take far too long."
Yeah. And so even when you sort of embarked on that with the bet and stuff, were you thinking then, well, I'll write this into anything, or was it just an experience to sort of freshen things up for you?
Yeah, it's kind of. So it was. So for people that don't know, it was the first time I'd been to Ireland. I'd seen a man hitching with a fridge, and said to the guy that was driving me, did I see that reel? Was that bloke hitching with the fridge? And he just went, oh yeah, and never said another word about it. And it wasn't even a conversation point. That's when I knew that Ireland was an extraordinary place, and I sort of got it in my head that I could fast forward. Then at a dinner party, and I told the story and said Ireland is the one place in the world where you could hitch with a fridge, and made this bet when drunk, but then decided to do it. And that was the strange thing, because I had to tell my agent, things were going okay for me and this stuff was happening. And I said, look, I'd like to take 5, 6 weeks off because I want to hitchhike around Ireland with a fridge. And they genuinely thought I'd lost my mind. You know, they tried to say, don't do it. So what I was going to do, vaguely connecting it with my career, was a Radio 4 producer gave me or lent me loads of recording equipment, which was quite bulky in those days. A DAT recorder and a microphone and various things. And the idea was that it might make a radio program in some sort of shape or form with me chatting to people in pubs or whatever.
Yeah.
But as it turned out, you know, most of the time I was too drunk to operate the equipment, and it was mostly turning it off when I thought it was already on, and just doing it the wrong way around. So that, you know, I'd have me in the bathroom getting ready to go out recorded, and then would chat to somebody in a pub and turn it off.
Yeah. Excellent.
So it was never going to happen. But it did mean that when I did get it right and did record things, when I got back, and I decided after 3-4 days of this trip that what was happening was so extraordinary that I should try and write a book. I did have this audio memory of what had happened. I had, albeit poor quality.
Yeah.
I had photos. It was still at the time when you had to send photos off to be developed and then come back. But I had all my photos, and then I had these tapes, and I'd listen to them, and I was able to quote people exactly as what they said most of the time, which was great. So that I don't think I could have done it probably otherwise. I just would have forgotten everything. And honestly, my motive for that was really to try and do justice to the trip. I loved it so much, and what had happened was so incredible. I just thought I've got a duty to try to tell this in the best way I can, and it really took off, you know. And I thought, well, that's it. Books, that's the
future.
I do will be a massive hit.
Yeah.
Okay.
How long after the event did the book come out?
It was, it took about 9 months to kind of get it together to write it. So it was probably about 1.5 years after coming back, really.
And then the time from that to the film happening, what was that like?
Well, that was about 10 years or longer, possibly. Yeah.
And was that something you were approached about, or is that you wanting to be a film star?
No, that was something I was approached about, but that one was a fairly long story as well, in that I was approached by a Hollywood producer about them wanting to do it, and we did a whole deal, and it was supposed to happen. And then, my agent had negotiated this thing where I had to give approval of certain things or what have you, otherwise they couldn't do it. So they came over and they had to kind of woo me a bit. And I sat down. I remember sat down in this meeting with them, and they said, "Well, can we pitch the story to you?" And I thought that was a little bit odd because I'd written it, you know.
Right.
Lived
you
it.
know, I started to get a little bit nervous at this point. They're pitching this story. Okay, we'll fire away. And then the writer that they got in kind of said, "Okay, so Tony's a really downbeat guy working in a factory. And he hates his job, and he comes home, and his wife wants to go on holiday, and he doesn't want to go, and he ends up arguing and having this terrible row with his wife. So I'd rather go on holiday with the fridge than with you." And I said, "Well, you can have a bet in this at all." And they went, "No." And I just remember, I mean, I've had a few in my life of just having this integrity attack where I kind of went, I'm too fond of this thing to let this become something else. I mean, I wouldn't now, I'd be fine with something like that. But at the time, now, please do what you love.
Exactly,
Just write me the check. At the time, I wasn't interested in that. I thought, well, no, we must be able to do something that's closer to this story. They really just wanted to buy this idea and then go. I remember, I don't know whether you ever saw Yes. What's it? The Danny Wallace book that he did.
Yes Man, is it Yes Man?
Yeah, Yes Man. I mean, I read Danny's book, and then I saw the film, and I thought they'd done a similar thing with it. You know, they'd taken it so far away from his original idea, and maybe he did brilliantly out of it and everything like that. But to me, it was I was too close and too stupid to let them do it. And so we ended up doing it at about another 5, 6 years on from that, and just trying it on a much lower budget and hopefully a much truer representation of the story.
What was it like making a film of your own life experience? Was that, and also sort of writing it and everything, translating it to camera?
Yeah, I mean, it was probably, I don't know how to describe it really. It is odd, isn't it? Because I was playing myself, but a kind of fictionalized version of myself as well. Because the one thing we did need for a film that wasn't needed for a non-fiction book was a narrative arc. In reality, it was bloke goes, I bet Ireland is the one place in the world where you can hitch with a fridge. Goes there, finds out he's right, you can. And that's not going to make a movie. That's not. So you've got to have this jeopardy. So we were trying to work out how this could happen. I was trying to write the screenplay, and I thought, well, I've got to make the Tony character go on more of a journey. So I just have to play an arsehole at the beginning, who actually doesn't really want to be doing it that much, but does make the bet, but wants to get out of the bet, and is sort of forced into it.
Right.
And then then goes on a healing journey in Ireland, really, which is really what, to some extent, it was a journey of learning huge things. I've learned lots of lessons doing that fridge journey that still apply to my life. It's just I wasn't that much of an arsehole at the beginning, in my opinion.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've been asked a million times, but what happened to the fridge in the end?
You still got it?
Well,
haven't you?
the fridge is all sorts of adventures with the fridge. So the fridge is now back with me, but it's been all over the place. It was in Northern Ireland for a decade, virtually.
Brilliant.
I went over to do an after-dinner speech there, and they said, bring your fridge. So they wanted the fridge there, but you have to get all sorts of permissions from airlines to take a fridge on because of the gases in the back. So we did all, but then I had to come back in a hurry to do something, and there wasn't time to sort it all out coming back. So I just left it with somebody in Belfast, and then it ended up. I came over again, and again I didn't have time to take it back. So this time I moved it from where it had been last time and left it with the bloke who gave me the first lift, or the second lift I got, Brendan, because I him for a drink, and I said, well, can you look after the fridge? You've earned the right to have the fridge. And then I did a gig at a book festival about 6 months ago, and this bloke turned up with my fridge.
Oh, really?
And the story, he'd been at another.
Was it like one of those moments where you're like a love story, moving towards each other and
In slow motion?
It was like we were brought back together again, and it was yeah. If it had been the Hollywood movie, the music would be playing.
Right.
But the story behind that was he'd come to another talk at a book festival I'd done, and the question had been asked, "Where's the fridge?" And I'd said it's in Northern Ireland. And he came up to me at the end, and I'd forgotten this, and he said, "I'll go and get it for you, if you want. I'm going on holiday there at some point." And I just didn't. I gave him my email address and told him where it was, and I never, he just turned up with it. He just
Right.
gave me my fridge back.
That's amazing.
Yeah. The funny thing is that, I say funny thing is, as I'm now reading the book to my 11-year-old son, he's now become a bit of a fan of this book. It's a great story in a way. It makes you feel rather proud. Although I keep having to miss sections out.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Fair
I
enough.
haven't got to the bit where I have sex in a dog kennel yet.
Just skip that. Skip that.
I don't know whether to skip that or maybe introduce him to it.
That could be the sex education moment, maybe.
Yes.
That's right. Let's do it all in one go.
Yeah.
But he says, you should sign have you signed the fridge? And everybody else signed the fridge. Right. And I never signed it. I've never signed my fridge. So maybe I need to, the other signatures are all very faded now. So maybe I need to sign my own fridge.
Definitely.
Yeah. And it must be really nice because so many of your books follow a particular period of your life. So like you say with your son, you can then eventually relive all of that through.
Yes, I think so. I mean, I did when I first, I don't know whether he looks at me quite the same anymore, though. His dad is a bit weird. I hope it's in a kind of that's a bit weird with a slight bit tinge of admiration. And maybe I hope it sort of actually shows him that you don't have to follow, you don't have to worry about what everybody wants and expects you to be. You can be yourself, however however weird
Yeah.
it ends up looking to other people. Just do it. Um, but they are vaguely or sometimes too autobiographical when in some bits. But he features in the book I wrote called Once Upon a Time in the West Country. His birth is a chapter.
Right.
A comedy look at birth.
Yes.
It's got to be done.
That's a good segue, actually, because one of the questions we had sent in related to that book, and it's from Anna in Liverpool. It says, "Hi, Tony. I've just read Once Upon a Time in the West Country, which I very much enjoyed. Sorry I was late reading it. As it's now 10 years since you wrote the book, I was wondering if you're still living in Devon, and are you thinking of writing a sequel to update us on what you've been up to since 2015? Thanks. I'm a great admirer of your work." That was Anna in Liverpool. So,
Well, Anna, I am still living in Devon, and my son is now 11. So the maths kind of add up, don't they, roughly? And yeah, I'm kind of in London half the time in Devon. I did miss London a bit, and I couldn't really. I mean, my neighbours down in Devon, they really, really want to talk about tractors. And I don't, it's like I went on a tractor run. I did it in the book, actually, and I will hopefully remember. And they have all these guys that were driving these tractors, whatever. We had a sort of lunch break, and they'd come up and talk to me, and they'd say, "Well, what's your tractor like?" Which I'd borrowed, and I'd be able to say, "Well, it's a red tractor. My one, it's red," and that was it. I had nothing else. And that's the connection that I kind of have with the real sort of bona fide locals. It's very rural. And then the other section, a lot of people go to Devon to retire. And there are elements of it that I need to go and get a bit of London and a bit of people that are in comedy and music and stuff as well. Not that there are people like that in Devon, of course, but there are just tons of them in London,
Yeah.
So I split my life between them, but no plans to write a follow-up book yet. I'm at a bit of a loose end as to whether to do another book at all. I just don't know whether I've got the energy really.
yeah.
And there's no publishers sort of saying, please do it. So I think what happened in COVID, a lot of people will say this, is that everybody started writing books, all the people with massive fan bases already. And I think if you haven't done one for 4 or 5 years or even longer in my case, they're just not really interested. But that could change, obviously.
And also, I mean, all the books you've written, I mean, I've read a number of them and they're fantastic and they really last with the fans of your stuff. So it's a wonderful thing. And I should ask about your novel just very briefly, because obviously one of the last books you wrote was a novel. How was that? I know it sort of had essences of a comedian, going on an exploratory journey, but what was that like for you? Was it hard to write something like that?
Well, it was interesting. Yeah, I'd written it as a screenplay to start with. So it's called Persistent Wind, and I haven't really promoted it at all. It's a self-published book really, because I went to see some publishers and they just tried to persuade me to write another book. Can't you do something like Richard Osman, was what one of them said.
Right.
Can you? And you kind of went, well, look, I've got this other book that I've written that I've come to see you about, and you're asking me to write a different book. That's not very complimentary, So I don't think they'd even read it. They just thought, well, we want it to be. I mean, this is a frustrating side of it's a business, publishing, the music business, all of this stuff. And sometimes you just have done something which creatively you like, and it might not sit into a category. Round Island with a Fridge didn't, and they only published it because I was doing a bit of TV at the time. And so they thought, well, we'll sell a few copies, we'll have a go. And then, of course, it did sell well. I'll tell you this quickly, just for anyone listening that wants to find out what publishing world is like, is after it had sold well, not after I'd written it, whether they liked it or not, only after it sold well, they came to me and said, would you like to do another book? And then I told them about this bet I'd made with Arthur Smith that I could play and beat the entire Moldovan national football team at tennis. And I said, I think that might make a book. And they said, great idea, but nobody's interested in Moldova. Can you set it somewhere else, like Brazil or something like this? And I said, no, that's not what happened.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, and they wouldn't have done it if the other book hadn't have just been selling that well. And they kind of had to say yes because I insisted, and it did well. And I think it was more interesting because I didn't know anything about it, and it was again, it was real rather than trying to write something that would sell. So that's always been a kind of frustrating element, and I'm kind of in that world a little bit now with publishers. So they weren't keen on this book. Well, I thought, well, I'll write this novel anyway and see if I can do it, because I didn't know if I could write fiction. And it went well, and I enjoyed it actually, and I still think it would make a good movie. And at some point when I've got the energy, I think I'll put my head above water and start promoting it, but I've done nothing. But maybe some people will buy it as a result of this wonderful interview I'm now doing.
We'll certainly promote it for you.
We will.
Absolutely. But I mean, your books have so.
Persistent Wind, it's called.
Yes.
It's called. Did I say that? I can't remember.
No,
That's
you didn't,
always
but-
a good way to promote something.
That helps.
It helps, doesn't it? Yeah.
Telling people what it's called. Yeah.
But I
Sorry.
think we both think all your work has so much heart. All your books have so much heart, and I really loved the playing the Moldovans at tennis, and the film as well is like a sort of grittier film, but a really moving film, and also the fact that you wrote all the music as well, which is quite impressive.
Oh,
So I
thank
mean,
you, yeah.
for all the people who don't get it, there are lots that do.
Well, I like to think that that's important to me, that the heart is there. I'm not that interested in being successful in a way. I mean, it's wonderful when you are, and it's lovely to get approval. It really is. It's you do it because you want people to like what you've done. But if you're just doing it for that and there isn't anything else behind it, then I'm not really interested. It has to be something that I really want to do, and I really want to tell a story, and so the heart. I'm glad it comes through because it's really important to me.
It really does, and there are so many people out there that find that, and it means a lot to them. So yeah, I think you're taking the right course. Says this guy randomly who lives in.
Well, one
Hitchin.
thing I should say about the playing Moldovans at tennis one is the spin-off story to it, which is rather nice. Is that I don't know whether I've told you this, but when I was there and I was seeing this extreme poverty there, that I decided I'd put half the royalties into a fund to do something for Moldova if the book did well.
Yeah.
And it did well enough for there to be enough money for us to buy a little property in the center of Chisinau, the capital. And we started this little care center for kids with cerebral palsy, and it's still going to this day.
That's great.
They changed the name of it about 10 years ago from the Hippocrates Center to the Tony Hawk's Center.
Nice.
And I was quite flattered at the time, and then soon afterwards realized, damn, they've got me for life now. I can't get out of this thing. Yeah. So I go back every year. I missed a bit during COVID or what have you. And we go and do shows, we do things, and we're trying to get things happening. And so still, Moldova is very much a part of my life. Right. It's amazing.
That's so good. I know it's the bane of your life, but is there any skateboarding confusion over there with the Tony Hawk Centre?
I don't know whether people turn up there with skateboards as such.
Yes.
And if they do, they soon realise very quickly that they're
in the wrong place.
Yeah. But the Tony Hawk story that I do get mixed up with him and get all these emails still to this day that are meant for him asking.
I was going to ask if you still get them. Okay.
Yeah,
and you still reply?
I put them in a little folder at the moment, and
Nice.
I might just come back at them one day, and then I tend to be able to write the funniest replies when I just do them all together. Right?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Knock that one off. No, I get in the mood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
But there's a few I must tell you this story because it was. I was invited. I was phoned up by a BBC radio researcher who said, I hear you're in the country at the moment. No, it was an email. He didn't know it was an email because he would have known if he'd spoken to me. He sent me an email saying, I hear you're in the country at the moment, Tony. Wondering if you'd be care to give us some time doing a live radio interview whilst you're over here. So I played along with this. I thought, well, yeah, of course, I'm available. I'm delighted to be here in the UK, what is this stuff. And it was all going to happen. It was something like Radio Yorkshire or something like this. And with about an hour to go, I just suddenly thought I could get this bloke the sack here. I just thought it's funny, but it's such terrible research from him to have kind of got me on. And it may not have happened. They may have seen the funny side, but I pulled from it at the last. I told him, I said, look, guy, I had another bloody integrity attack and said, look, it's not me. Yeah. It's not me, I'm afraid. And I think I wouldn't have been able to live with it if he'd got the sack from it. But although he probably deserved that.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, I didn't like to say, but actually we thought we were booking Tony Hawk today, so it's a little bit awkward. But
it's awkward.
Yeah, well, I'm much lovelier than I met him actually. I met him on. He did come over to promote one of his games, and the Big Breakfast got me on the same show.
Oh, really?
And he was. He just couldn't work out why they'd got this other bloke sitting there using up his time, and he was kind of completely baffled by the whole thing. He wasn't unpleasant, but he just didn't warm to the idea in the
right. Okay,
just confused.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, there's so many other things we could ask you, but we also want to release you back into the world because you've been here for a long time. But thanks so much for doing this, and thanks so much for coming to Mostly Comedy as well previously and playing the club.
Okay, well, it's great to chat to you guys.
Yeah, thanks so much,
thanks
Tony.
so much for joining us.
Okay.
Hopefully see you again soon.
I hope so. Take care.
See you
Cheers.
soon.
Bye.
Cheers.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
So that was Tony Hawks, and that was very, very interesting, I thought.
Yeah, really interesting. And so we managed to cover a lot of topics, but there's so much that we also want to ask him again because it's it's just he has so many stories. He's done so much, which is incredible.
Yeah. Well, when were you first aware of him? Do you think?
I had these CDs of I'm Sorry I Haven't a Clue, and like when I was younger, I was quite young to get into that. And I just remember him being the sort of, because he's obviously got the goodies on there, and Barry Cryer, and he was the younger voice.
Right.
And just everything he came up with always made me laugh. And then it wasn't until the last few years being aware of the books and the films. So it's mostly been through radio and some TV stuff. But yeah, what about yourself?
Well, I think probably the first I knew of him was there was a kid that I say kid, he's now an adult. I used to teach guitar, a guy called Ash, and we sort of had a similar sense of humour. And one day he said to me, "Oh, have you read this book, Round Island with a Fridge?" And that was probably like, I don't know, early 2000s or something. So probably a bit after you sort of discovered him. And read it and just thought it was great. And I think, and then probably connected it with the voice that I did sort of recognise from things. And I think because he's got such a really definite tone that that is sort of funny anyway. The way he delivers stuff is very sort of precise and very distinctive. I think,
he does. I didn't get to tell him that we'd watched Round Island with a Fridge, but it is so good. And full of great people like Sean Hughes and Josie Lawrence, and it's great. Watch it if you haven't.
Did you get the chance to watch the other one yet, the Moldovans?
No, not yet. You have, right?
I have, yeah. And it's really good. It's sort of slightly grittier, like I said in the interview, because I think the sort of subject and stuff. But it's really good. And also he does a lot more of the incidental music in it, which is quite interesting as well. You just sort of find yourself noticing it, going, "Oh, okay," so he's obviously gone through it like scoring a film, and it's just interesting to see when he's chose to do like little piano things or
it's so impressive how much he's done. How many different things he's done in the entertainment world. And from what he was saying, it was mostly not by luck, but fell into his lap, which is always seems to be the way it happens, I guess. Yeah,
definitely. And we didn't even get a chance to ask him about the whole one-hit wonderland thing where he tried to get another number one or another top 10 hit, and he ended up doing it with Norman Wisdom.
That's it, yeah. Next time.
In Albania or something, which is, so again, just all the people that he's connected with. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah. Amazing.
But no, really cool to have him. And it's kind of crazy. You sort of step outside of yourselves every so often and go, yeah, that's Tony Hawks, who like you said, you've known for years and I've known him for years as well. It's really kind of Crazy.
Yeah, and so such a lovely guy. Such a lovely guy.
Yeah, definitely. We didn't get to ask him much about Red Dwarf as well. I was quite intrigued to sort of, because he used to be the warm-up for it, I believe.
Yeah, he was the warm-up and then had parts, and he was various voices.
Yeah.
Quite a career.
I think it's quite sort of reassuring in a way that, I mean, I wonder if it'd be so easy to do this now, but the way his sort of career just sort of fell into certain ways, you know, by being sort of accidental rather than planned. I wonder if it would be so easy now to get a deal, to get a single in the charts, to all those things.
Only if you had a certain amount of social media followers.
Yes.
That's the sad truth.
Yeah.
Of what would happen today.
It's quite depressing, isn't it, really?
It is, yeah. On that note.
Yeah. Actually, the other thing I found interesting was, like I said in the thing about, because I'd looked up the Stutter Rap video. I don't know if you got a chance to watch that, the sort of Beastie Boys thing, and then watched the Saturday Live thing he was talking about. And watching it, I just thought, oh, presumably that's just them doing it after it was a single. But no, they did that first, and that was what got them the deal and the thing. So it's kind of crazy, really.
Yeah, so mad. Very cool, though.
Very cool.
Very, very cool.
He looks very young there.
He does, yeah.
But yeah, thanks for listening to this interview. We've got plenty more in the archive. Did you say this is series 6?
Series 6, yeah.
Okay, so 5 series worth, so I can do my own maths, of various people. We got, in fact, Greedy Arthur Smith that Tony Hawk's referenced, the guy who set the bet for Moldova, and also Sean Hughes, who was in the Fridge film. He was very funny in that, wasn't he? I thought it was
He's brilliant. He's so good, yeah. You must watch it. If you can watch it, do, because he's great. I mean, they all are, but he's brilliant.
Definitely, yeah, and read the books as well. But yeah, anyway, that was that, and hopefully we'll have you back with us soon for another interview.
See you soon.
Bye.